Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. The purpose of this is to help you plan and organise a fantastic holiday, whether that be a week, probably looking at something overseas. I did this recently myself and I was pretty surprised at how much effort and planning was required. So the purpose of this is to help you and go through some of the things that I learned along the way, put all into the one place, and hopefully this will be a really handy list to help you have a really seamless and fantastic holiday. So some of the things that I'm going to cover through: insurance, travel insurance number one, and I'll tell you why it's number one, passports, visas, how to organise your flights or accommodation, where would you like to stay, what are the pros and cons of the different types of accommodation, foreign currencies and how to organise that. Packing cubes, they're a bit of a buzzword at the moment, and I have to say I'm newly converted, so I'm going to talk you through the benefits of those. When to travel, there's different pros and cons around that, so we'll go through those. And how to research. You know, there's a fabulous thing called technology now, and there's so much you can learn and prepare for to make your trip really seamless, so that when you're actually overseas, you're spending the time doing the things that you want to do, as opposed to your head in your phone while you're overseas trying to work out what to do next. Really good to plan ahead. Languages, you know, quite a few people ask, do you need to know the language? So I think it's useful, so I'm going to give you a few tips around just the basics will really get you off to a good start. How to get around when you're in the place that you want to be, what are some of the applications and tools that you can use. Pickpockets, they're certainly out there, so we'll go through some of the types of scams and how can you know, what do you need to do to avoid them. Phones, they're really important in terms of how do you get around, the GPS, talking to each other, so we'll go through those. If that sounds of interest to you, stay with me and we'll go through some of the tips that I learned along the way, and hopefully they'll benefit you. So first up, travel insurance. Travel insurance, unfortunately, was one of the things that I thought about towards the end of my planning, but I highly recommend that you think about it up front, largely because it might change the way that you decide to pay for some of your travel things before you leave home. So many credit cards will include travel insurance. I have 2 different credit cards and they both include travel insurance. One of them required me to have paid for the flights in order to trigger the benefits of the travel insurance. The other one required me to only have paid for things that were associated with the trip ahead of leaving home. So things like accommodation, tours, and likewise. The first one, well, we actually used reward points, and reward points associated with Qantas, so the airline, not associated with the credit card. So we weren't able to use that credit card for insurance because it wasn't, the flights weren't paid for with that credit card. However, fortunately, I realised just in time that the second credit card, as long as I could shift some of my payments, then I could pay for things like the accommodation and a couple of the tours, had to be a certain amount, $500 per person travelling. And so I structured the payments such that that credit card could actually allow and provide me the insurance that we needed for our trip. Now that saved us in excess, I got different quotes from different people, but probably in excess of $800, which is a fair amount. So I really encourage you to look at your credit card, look to see if there is something that you can use that will cover you. Make sure that you go across the terms and conditions and make sure that it's suitable for you and your family and for your needs. Read the T's and C's carefully, it's really important. And if it does suit you, reach out to your credit card company, to the bank probably, that's who I went through, and find out if the credit card will give you the insurance. Get a policy number, get a reference number before you leave home. Make sure that you've got the payments structured the right way so that you pay for things before you leave home that would trigger that insurance. And you get your free travel insurance, which is a huge benefit. Next up, passports and visas. These sound really obvious, but they are easy ones to forget about. I have to say, across my course of travel, which is pretty extensive, I've caught myself out once on passports and once on a visa, which was really costly, very stressful. So encourage you, let's get these covered and ticked off before you leave home. Passports, you need to make sure ideally that you have 6 months before you jump on the plane, 6 months left before your passport expires. So look at that. I know in many countries it might be the minimum of 3 months. I suggest you don't play it to the line. I would be looking for about a 6 month before your passport is due to expire. And then visas. Always check the country that you're going to check that your country will be accepted in without a visa, and if you need to get a visa, go ahead and get one. We got caught out that one of the Asian countries would allow us in as Australian citizens without a visa. Unfortunately, the rules had changed. They changed from some time earlier to that day when we were travelling, and we were required to have a visa. It was incredibly stressful trying to organise something. We were at the airport and we weren't allowed to go through without having planned for someone to arrange the visa for us in this country while we were travelling. It cost an awful lot of money, and really it's travel 101. I can't believe I fell for it, but never again. So just make sure that you are checking that and don't make assumptions that you'll be right, having learnt the hard way. So when is it best to travel? Well, it's going to suit different people. If you've got a ski holiday, you probably want to go in the winter. If you're after a beach holiday, you're probably looking at least spring, summer, autumn. But if you're not really locked into those things, I really encourage you to look at the pros and cons. The number of people traveling at the moment is huge. You've probably heard all about it. Crowds galore, you kind of get shuffled through. We were recently in Italy and recently in January, and it was just delightful to have hardly anyone around. The crowds were really low. It was comfortable to walk around. We didn't have the heat. We had the beautiful Christmas lights. Yes, the daylight hours are much shorter. You've got the sun setting in London sometimes around 4 o'clock, in Italy 5 o'clock. Obviously got to rug up. These are the negatives against the crowds and the really hot weather that happens in the middle. Even up to September it can be really hot in somewhere like Italy. So think about what are the pros and cons. What is it that's going to make you really happy when you're on holidays? What is the environment that you want, and what's really important to you? There are pros and cons, and you just have to weigh up what are the priorities for you. I personally really enjoyed travelling in January. I would do it again at the drop of a hat. And for me, that really suited our family. It was easy to take a couple of extra layers. Flights. How are you going to get to your holiday destination? Well, I recommend that you start with something like skyscanner.com. Really useful to tell you kind of what options you've got, who flies where, an idea of what the prices are, and start to look at what's going to suit you. Where do you want to do your layover? Do you want to stop on your way? What are the prices that are out there? It's a really good starting point. Consider different dates. Look at trial and error. Don't just go, these are the hard dates, unless you have no option, of course. But try different options. It's trial and error is going to give you the best outcome for sure. Take a look at the different options. You might go, okay, I'm only going to go economy, but maybe look at the price for premium economy and it's not that much more for a fair bit more comfort. So just look at what suits you and play around with it. See what deals you can get. It will make a difference to the overall price and sometimes the comfort of your trip. So where should you stay when you get to your destination? Well, I guess you've got the hotel or an apartment, maybe a hostel, but I'm going to focus on hotels or apartments. Hotels, fantastic because you can usually store your luggage when you get there early. Reception are generally really happy to take your luggage. You can go on out, explore for the day and come back when it's check-in time. Airbnbs or apartments, you often can't get in. We couldn't get into ours until 4 o'clock, which was quite late, but often it's sort of 3 o'clock onwards. So what are you going to do with your bags? If you arrive somewhere early, like we arrived at 6 a.m. from Australia and had all day before we could get into our apartment at 4 o'clock. That's the negative on an apartment. You have to find somewhere to store your luggage, and we'll cover that as well. But while we're on this, the pros around an apartment, clearly you usually have more space. You have a kitchen, so it doesn't mean you have to eat out every meal, particularly something like breakfast, which is often much cheaper to be able to cater for yourself. That's really useful, and you've got a bit more space and a washing machine. They can be really useful. So they're what I see as the pros of an apartment. And in terms of a hotel, you might feel that it's more secure. I haven't really worried about where I've been with an apartment, but perhaps sometimes it is more secure. You've got someone on hand that you can call and talk to if you need that, particularly if you're looking for directions or something like that. That might give you a sense of security, so I guess that's a pro on that side. So if you arrive early and you have got an apartment, what do you do with your luggage? Well, you need to store it if you want to make use of the day. You don't want to be lugging around a big bag. If it's just a backpack, perhaps you can take that with you. Although security is pretty tight these days in terms of what you can take into various sites. The Vatican, you wouldn't be able to take a very big bag with you, and they may not let you store it in their luggage room. So what are you going to do with it? Well, there's a couple of options. There's some great companies that are out there that will store it for you. Things like Hero Luggage and Stasher.com. I'll leave the details of those. Sometimes you'll arrive at them and you'll think, are these places secure? I've used them once or twice before, quite good. I did notice that one of them recently when I was in London was actually using a hotel as their base, and that gave me a sense of security. So I would really, I would feel more comfortable about that. There's often storage available at airports or train stations. Airports, I find, unless you're just there for a day, it's not particularly useful. Who wants to go out to an airport and leave? They're usually out of town. That's not so useful unless you just arrive at an airport, you want to go explore during the day and then come back for another flight. Clearly that works well, but usually not so centrally located to be particularly convenient. But train stations, they often, if there's something there, then that can be more central, so something to look into there. When we arrived at crack of dawn with the family from Australia early in the morning, we actually found that there's a thing called a day hotel. So you can book a hotel room at a fraction of the price that you would if it was for overnight. And that was super useful. So we only booked the one room for the 4 of us in our family so that we could have a shower when we got there early, refresh ourselves, and somewhere to store our bags and know that they were safe. It was really helpful. And if we were tired during the day, the idea was that we could go back and have a little sleep if we needed to. So a really good option out there for you to consider. Money in another country. What are you going to do? How are you going to keep it safe? This is a really important one to think about before you leave, and what works best for you. So a couple of options. That old saying that cash is king, I don't think so. Not so much anymore. The travel that I've done recently, pretty much cards are accepted everywhere. So you don't have to go and get hordes of the foreign currency, and I would encourage you not to, from a safety point of view. If it goes missing, you've got nothing to fall back on. So minimal cash would be what I recommend, and if you find that you're short, go to an ATM and get it out in the country that you're there, that you feel that you need some more money to have available. But generally speaking, you don't need a whole lot of cash. So what other options have you got? Credit cards. I think that they're pretty good, pretty safe. Look into what your credit card is. I find the best way at the moment, credit card on my phone. Love it. Super useful, just tapping for everything. You know, in London, I've now done 2 trips to London over the last year or so, and I've not spent a single penny or pound. Everything is tap and go, including, you know, for the train system, for the underground and the tube. Brilliant. You just tap and go. Really useful. And it feels safe. So long as you're looking after your phone, it's safe. Even if something happens to your phone, you can log on through the internet and cancel or put a hold on your credit cards. So really useful from a safety point of view. The other options are travel cards, and we did actually use a travel card recently, and the benefit of a travel card is that you can actually stock it up with the foreign currency of the place that you're going to. So let me give you an example. Here we are in Australia, we organise a travel card and we transfer from our Australian bank account into an account that's sort of set up that holds pounds. And this travel card, you can, again, you tap the card, use it like a credit card effectively. But when you do that, it's converted the Australian dollars into pounds, so that when you're actually tapping, you're paying with pounds. And the idea is that you limit the amount of transaction fees, because you're actually just paying in pounds, like as if you had an English credit card. That's the whole idea around a travel card. They're particularly useful, I find, for low-cost items. So, you know, if you're just buying, you know, gelatos or, you know, maybe a coffee or something like that, really useful. And we actually used it for our children as well. Our kids are older teenagers, but it meant that we could stock up a card with just, you know, a small amount of money, you know, a couple of $100s at a time. And it did mean that if the kids lost the card, well, the first up, it was really good that they had something available to just pay themselves if they were out doing something. You know, they had the freedom to just buy what they needed. The gelatos, nothing, no Gucci watches, hopefully. But, you know, just they would tap for their gelatos or whatever else they wanted to buy during the day. And if they lost the card, we could easily stop it through the bank, but also $200. It's not the end of the world. You know, no one's going to go and spend, you know, crazily, you know, like they might on a credit card. So I thought, from a ease of mind and the ability to manage how much money was at risk, that was particularly useful. And I would encourage doing that. I might also add some of the airlines, like Qantas does have their own travel card as well. And I've used that as well. So, you know, consider, I think that really ideally these ones, Wise is another one that people are talking about. Use it for the small little pieces, bits and bobs that you need to buy along the way. But otherwise, credit cards, I think that for the bigger transactions, they're more ideal. And cash you might find really useful if you're at a market. We got into a gondola and he said, no, only cash. And we said, oh, well, we have no cash, so we have to get out. And he said, oh, no, it's all right, here's my machine. You know, so yes, I know that cash is beneficial to them. If you've only got the credit card, they'll be pretty happy to take your money and give you a good service. Okay, you got a lot of things organised now and you're thinking about what are you going to wear. My number one tip, and you will have heard this everywhere, but having just experienced it myself, I do recommend that you pack light. I did not. So that's my lesson for next time, is pack light. We were away for a month. I did have about a 24 kilo bag. And it was too much. And yes, it was the middle of winter, so more layers and more clothes required. But 24 kilos in a big bag, there were 4 of us, and trying to get a taxi that could fit those 4 big bags was a nightmare. Cars are pretty small in Europe. and trying to get one taxi that was big enough. And then when we did, there was an extra surcharge on it. Often we'd have to try and organise an Uber van so they could fit in, and then when we did a car hire from Rome all the way up through Italy up to Venice, we needed to hire a big car as well, so that again the luggage could fit. So yeah, I would not do it again. Definitely travel light. It makes it so much harder dragging a bag, trying to put the bag up high in trains, getting the bag up over steps. The taxis, like I just spoke about, much harder. I wouldn't do it again. I was really lucky. I did have my strong 18-year-old son. I think if I hadn't have had him, I would have ditched the bag along the way. And you know, also without that, you'll probably buy things that you know, some souvenirs, some clothes from overseas. So the bag only gets heavier. So really recommend try and keep it as light and as little as you can. You know, and if things are desperate, you can always buy overseas. And heard a great tip the other day that no matter how long you are away for, plan for a week. I thought that's great, because really most places, particularly if you're staying in apartments, they've got a washing machine or washing facilities. Even people who are using laundromats, and you know, find that a great way to meet the locals. Essential item on what to wear is comfortable shoes. You will do a lot of walking. Usually if you're on holidays, you're there to experience, to explore, and you will walk your feet off. So you want to be super comfortable in whatever it is that you have on your feet. For me, that meant some really comfortable sneakers. I went the brand ECCO, and had some white leather sneakers with a really decent sole. So when I was walking over the cobblestones, I wasn't tripping, I wasn't sliding down the side, well supported, and I wasn't feeling the roughness of the cobblestones as much. The other thing I would say is leather was super useful in the middle of winter. My daughter, she had some Converses, the canvas Converse, and they were, as soon as she put them on, and the day before she'd had her Doc Martens, the leather was cool. She could feel the cold coming straight through the canvas. So leather, particularly useful in terms of keeping out cold. Also, you know, for a little bit of rain, it's definitely going to help with that as well. So I would recommend leather and a really good sole, and be comfortable in them. If you have orthotics, you definitely want to take your orthotics. Make sure they fit into the shoes and you're comfortable with them in there. A little chat about packing cubes. So new to me this time round. Previously, I've just thought it was perfectly fine to lay my clothes nice and flat on the pants go flat on in the suitcase, and then my tops nicely folded up, no problem. This time at the last minute I thought, oh, what are these packing cubes that people are talking about? Should I give them a go? And we did. All four of us actually, the kids, my husband and I, and really recommend it. We bought the compression ones. In all honesty, I don't know that the compression is necessary. I didn't end up using the compression facility. I packed them not too full, because if you pack them too full you can't compress, but I folded my clothes within them. It's kind of just what I've always done. I'm not into the condo way of rolling things yet. You know, when you're on the go constantly moving, you know, from place to place within a few days, super useful to get to somewhere and know this bag's got all my tops in it. Pull out the one you want. What you do have to be good at is really disciplined about putting things back in there, and keeping them organized as you go along. But I would highly recommend them. You don't have to spend a lot of money. My husband was like $100 for this set of bags. You're kidding me. So we went a whole lot less than that, and they were perfectly fine. So give it a go. If you haven't tried it before, I'm a convert now. I won't travel without them for sure. So you've got this amazing holiday booked. What are you going to do when you get there? How do you know what to do when you get there? Well, there's fantastic ways to find out what is on offer. What should you be looking at when you get to a certain destination? So I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to go about that. YouTube. Well, you're probably pretty good at that already, given that you're here. But YouTube is fantastic. If you put in tourist interest in Italy, tourist interest in London, places to see in London, places to see in New York, what to do in New York, it will come up with places and some incredible YouTube clips on what to do and see, what's available, what to know about that particular place. And when you find someone that you like in terms of their style of presenting to you, look and see what else they've got on offer. Likely they'll have other clips that you can look at and learn some more about it. So for instance, in Italy, I looked at the tour guy. I thought he was pretty fun, and it was really interesting to see across the different places that we were going to, what did he recommend to do. I didn't go so much to the food places that were recommended. I kind of went, well, if everyone else is watching this, there's going to be a whole lot of tourists in those places, so I tended not to do that. But in terms of places to go and things to see, particularly really useful. Paris, just recently, there's a group called Les Frenchies, and they're really, really good. A couple that live in, actually a couple of Americans, actually I think one's French, one's American, that live in Paris now. Some really, really good tips from those two as well. I just really encourage you to take a look and see what you can learn, so you start to know what are the types of things, and then look at what are your interests, get to know what is available, so you can go, well, okay, these are the things that I might want to go see. Facebook groups. So again, if you just go into Facebook and you put in travel Rome, up will come a couple of options like romewise.com. The way these groups work is if you've got a question, you can ask them, you'll get some super useful help, some guidance around where might be a good place to stay. It's always really good to kind of home in and go, these are the things that I'm interested in, or this is an area I'm thinking of. Is there anything else that I should know about it? And even if you're not the ones asking the questions all the time, you can be a quiet little spectator and watch what everyone else is saying, what they're recommending. I did actually use that, particularly in Italy. I used it for some of the recommendations on where to eat. And I backed that up with also looking at TripAdvisor. Did TripAdvisor, what were the comments and the reviews on that? But found an incredible place in Florence for a Florentine bistecca, and it was superb. It was really good. But use these things to your advantage. Get to know what is it that you could be looking at, and then decide what is of value to you in the destinations of where you're going to. So you get your list. Couple of ways that you can then manage it. First up, I recommend just having a way to capture the things that you're interested in. Even maybe capture all the things that you could do and then decide what are the ones that you're interested in. When you know which ones you're interested in, start to put together a little bit of a schedule, because you want to look at to see when they're open and when they're not. So, for instance, if you wanted to see the changing of the guards at Buckingham Palace, it only happens certain days, certain times. It's not an everyday kind of scenario. So no point you booking your trip to Windsor Castle on the day that you need to be able to see changing of the guards. So you need to start scheduling, working out what is on when, and you juggle a few things around based on when they're open and when suits you, when you're there. So plan ahead. What I do is I get a spreadsheet, just what's going on in the morning, what's in the afternoon, and what's in the evening, and just start to place things out in terms of key things, activities that are happening over the course of that time, and then work out whether they're open at those times. And then once you book the ticket, I actually shade it green so that I know that it's locked in, and then I'll keep the details of the times, the locations, who I've booked it with in a separate spreadsheet. And then ones that, kind of like tentative, I don't think that we need to book in advance and we'll just play it by ear, I just shade them orange. So I'm like, yeah, these are things we want to do, but we can play around a little bit more and work out when's the best, in terms of how you're feeling. You don't know sometimes, especially if you're jet lagged, you're going to be overworked on that particular day, and you can play it by ear. But other things you're definitely going to have to book ahead for, and I guess that's a really important thing to raise, that if they are really key tourist things, make sure you book ahead. Don't leave it for chance, and you don't want to spend your time in a massive long queue. That's not fun. So book ahead, and I recommend really, where you can, book direct with the sites. So things like Westminster Abbey, you would book it with Westminster Abbey as opposed to a tour organizer. Same with things like the Colosseum. There's a direct site that you would go through. Vatican again, but you need to plan ahead, because things like in Rome, these key sites, they book out in advance. And if you want to do an underground tour of the Colosseum, they release the tickets 30 days in advance. And the only way I worked that out was by watching when they did release them, and then going, okay, I can see they're releasing them 30 days in advance. Let's check out, this is the date I want to be there. 30 days back from then, that's when I'm going to need to be online, ready for the tickets to be released. So a little bit of trial and error, but the experiences are worth it. One other thing I wanted to add in is, when you're planning and you've got your list of things to do, a really handy thing to do is to set it up on your phone, so that when you go into Maps or into Google Maps, so Maps is the iPhone version, or you can go into Google Maps, you can create your own guide. You go into your guide and you mark out the places that you're interested in seeing. That means that if you happen to be walking around, so in Rome, for instance, we walked, but we'd say go to the Pantheon, and you'd walk past a whole range of things, and I could look on my map and look at the guide that I created and go, oh, what else is nearby? Oh yeah, well, while we're here and while we're there, let's go see these things. Just helped to coordinate a whole lot easier. It also meant that, if there was a specific place we were going to go to, you could put in, it will automatically say, this is where I am now, my current location, and you say, this is where I want to go to, and you can get the instructions on how to walk there, how to get public transport. So you're going to another country and they don't speak your language. Let's say you're English speaking and they don't speak English. So Italy, France, and a lot of places in Europe actually, China, Asia. It is really useful to learn a couple of keywords. It doesn't take too much effort, but it will go a long way. You get some feedback from people saying, oh, they were rude in Paris, they wouldn't speak to me, they wouldn't engage, I had to know French. Well, my experience is that if you just go a little way to just the niceties, the introductions, they go, oh, this person's actually made a little bit of effort, and then they're happy to speak English, and often they can. So learn a little bit around the language of the place that you're going to. And how do you do that? Easy, YouTube. There's some great ones, and they'll focus on what are the tourist expressions, and largely you're just saying, hello, goodbye, what's the cost of this, thank you, please, a table for two, where are the toilets. They're not particularly hard things to learn, but they will go a long way. Put in a little bit of effort, and it will be rewarded to you and given back to you in spades, and you'll have a fabulous time. Okay, so on to something that's not as much fun, a discussion around pickpockets and how do you keep your things safe. Super important, really. You don't want to have awful things happening to you while you're on holidays. No one wants to spend their time at a police station for hours on end, and I've heard people having to spend hours on end just to lodge a police report over a pickpocket or a theft or something like that. And, at the end of the day, it doesn't benefit you, but you've lost, an important amount of time that you could be out enjoying yourself. So let's try and be as safe and as aware as we can, and not to the point that it's over the top and you're not enjoying your time and you're insecure or anything like that. I keep it in check, because this happens to the minority, but you want to make sure that it's not you. So what are the types of things to keep an eye out for, and how do you protect yourself? Well, firstly, keep your things really close to your person. So a crossbody bag I find really useful. You've got it across the front here, and you can hold your hand over the front of it if you're in a busy place and know that it's locked in close to you. If you're there in wintertime, you can put your jacket on over the top, so accessing it is actually really difficult, and you're pretty well protected. If you've got a backpack, you might look for one that has locks on it. Obviously, if you're in a really busy place, you could move it around to the front of you. And I wouldn't put anything too important in the backpack, or I would make sure that it was really securely locked and attached within the backpack. So there's some really key things to do. If you have to keep your bags and your phone close to you at all times, and your eye on them at all times. You can't just leave your phone on a table or your handbag on the chair next to you. You would really always want to keep it close to you. I mean, that is common sense, but in places, certainly here in Australia, we're pretty lax about that, but can't afford to be. Overseas in certain areas, the bag would be gone in no time. Things like your phone, that's what I'm looking at. Your phone, you want to have it attached to you if you can. So, my phone had a little strap that I could put on here. I can remove this if I want, it just clips off. But I've got a strap that actually can go as a crossbody or around my neck. And that's pretty useful as well. It's part of the case that I got. So think about your phone. I'm hearing about people having them ripped out of their hands. So if you're on a train or the metro underground and you get your phone out to look at your directions, and you're near the carriage where the door's open, people might just take your phone and run out the door and off they go, or particularly grab it just before the doors close, so you've got no chance to chase them down. So don't take your phone out where you're in exposed places like that, or keep it really secure, like have it around you. I was pretty adamant to the kids that just don't get your phone out when you're on public transport. Keep it safe, keep it away. Always be aware of who else is around you. It's a bit of common sense. The other thing is distractions. They're really common. So people, particularly groups of kids, a group of girls or a group of guys, will cause a distraction, gets you looking and you're focused on what's happening over there, and then someone comes behind and will take things from you. So don't allow yourself to be distracted. Always be aware that this might be an opportunity for something else to happen. And look out for who's there and who is in a wrong position, who's not doing the right thing. This is something that I've often noticed when I'm in London. If I go down into the tube there, I'll see someone just standing near the gates, and you're like, why isn't he moving along with everyone else? And he just eyeing up everyone that goes past, looking at their pockets, looking at everything that's on them. You're like, everyone else is moving, but this guy's just standing still. It doesn't look right. And if it doesn't look right, just be aware. Make sure that you're not one of his victims, and be really conscious all the time. You don't need to go over the top. Just look after yourself, and constantly thinking, have I got a good grip on everything, and is everything put away as much as it needs to be and can be. Obviously there are times that you're out in public and you need to look at something. Just try and do it discreetly, or when I would do it, I'd actually keep my finger in this loop. Maybe I would have lost my finger, I don't know, but it would have been hard to pull off at any point because it was locked away. It was an extra thing to hold it nice and safe. When we were at Naples, we were waiting for a train. You could see as you walked into the train station, a lot of people, you're kind of like, not feeling this is particularly safe. There were people that looked like they may be up to no good. Well, we could see there was a group of policemen standing over there, so I was like, okay, let's just go and stand over this way. You know, and we moved further inside the station because pickpockets want a quick exit. They want to be able to make their way out with, you know, as fast as they can. So if you're in deep into the train station, there's less ability for them to move around. And obviously if you're standing beside police, well, kudos to them if they're going to come steal something from you as well. It's just an extra security level that you could take. So don't scare yourself. I did feel that we perhaps over prepared, but maybe that was beneficial in the end. Just enjoy your time, but have your wits about you. Overseas on your phone. So how are you going? What data are you going to use? What network are you going to use? This is an important thing to think about. How do you know which one to go for? Well, I recommend take a look at the Facebook groups. Have a look at what are other people using. You can just search in the top of the Facebook group, put in eSIM, put in data. Up will come all the questions that have been asked before. Get on top of a plan before you go. Know what it is that you're going to be doing. This last time we used an eSIM. Sometimes you can do the data roaming from your country, find out what that cost is, find out how reliable it is, but definitely get it sorted. This last time we had unlimited data. It was really useful. It was nice not to feel that we were going to get caught out at any time. If you can afford it, I recommend it. If it's not possible, just think about how can you utilize the data plans as best as possible. But when you're overseas, you can go through your battery pretty quickly. You know, you use it for all the things that we've spoken about already, for directions, for getting around, for your credit card. It's easy to churn through your battery. So know what your phone is like. If you're going to be running out of battery, definitely pack one for the people that are in your family. Don't rely on them using yours because then you'll get stuck. So plan ahead with regard to that. And my number one tip, actually I'm going to give you two tips. The last one's a bit of a cheat. Number one tip. So if there is something really important to you and you want to see that particular thing in the destination you're going to, I would really recommend do it in the morning. The queues are usually so much less in the morning. Definitely get up early, book for the first entrance, like ticket entrance that you can do. And then when you get there, don't just settle for I'm here and I'll follow the path around. Go to the number one thing that you want to see. First up, you can always come back and see other parts of the museum or whatever it is that you're looking at. But go to the thing that is of interest, number one. An example of this was we went to the Vatican Museum, the Sistine Chapel. We were there for the earliest that it opened in January was 8 a.m. The museum actually takes you on this massive long route through the museum, and one of the last things that you see, if not the last thing, is the Sistine Chapel. And I thought, hey, I wonder if there's a way we can shortcut, go to the Sistine Chapel first up and then come back around and do the loop again. And it was possible. So we got to the Sistine Chapel, went straight there, managed to find what's the route to go. We actually asked one of the attendants and went straight there. And there was hardly anyone in there. I think there were maybe 10 people while we were in there for a good probably 30 minutes. Enjoying this space that is so often just jam-packed. I really recommend if there's something that you are there to see in particular, book early and go straight there. You know, the same would hold for things like David in Florence, or, you know, the Mona Lisa at the Louvre. These are the types of things that I'm talking about. If there's something in particular that you really want to see and you know it's going to be a number one tourist spot, go straight there. So that's my number one tip. And, you know, if you've stayed with me to the end here, hopefully you've got some great value out of these and you have a fantastic trip. My very last comment, and it's not really a tip, is enjoy yourself. Have the time of your life. Really, you know, travel is so much fun. I adore it. And, you know, I hope you really enjoy it as well. Go with the flow. You know, you can plan as much as you can, but, you know, at the end of the day, put a bit of fluidity to it. Go with the flow. See how you're feeling on the day. You know, book in the things that you really want to see, and then play around with things, see what happens as well. I think you kind of want to have the best of both of those worlds, but enjoy it and have a brilliant time, and I wish you all the best on your travels.